So today I would like to just highlight a few words on what polycystic ovaries are. Polycystic ovaries has got two entities. One is polycystic ovaries, which is pertaining only to a local issue concerning to the ovaries, and the other is the polycystic ovarian disease, which is a triad of symptoms. So to look into what this polycystic ovaries are, around 40% of the female population are being affected by polycystic ovaries. So this is an ultrasound finding wherein the female walks into an ultrasound clinic, she does her scans and the scan report says she's got PCOS. So what is alarming about this is, like, there are small multiple cysts seen in the ovaries along the periphery. So does this cause any issue for the women? This has to be looked into. So first, when they come to the clinician, we say whether they are only having a polycystic ovaries or they do have a triad of symptoms which includes obesity. This could be either overweight or obese women. Two, whether the women approaching us is hyperandrogenized. So to look into how they are hyperandrogenized, they have excess of hirsutism, they have excess hair growth either over the upper lip, chin or below the umbilicus, and this would give us an idea of what is the extent of the hyperandrogenization is. And three, few people are hyperinsulinemic. Hyperinsulinemic in the sense they do have acanthosis nigricans, which is dark pigmentation in and around the neck. So when the girl walks into our clinic, by the presentation, we are able to know to what extent they are being affected by the polycystic ovarian problem. So next, after they come to us, we do elicit a few important points from their history as to whether the cycles are regular. We are more concerned about the cyclicity, whether they do get their periods regularly or not, and how many days the bleeding lasts. Most of the patients affected by polycystic ovaries are either they do have oligomenorrhea, wherein they don't get their cycles regularly, their cycles are anovulatory and they get the bleed once in 2 to 3 months, and when they get the bleed, they do have the flow for around 5 to 6 days. So the menstrual history plays a very important role in diagnosing the polycystic ovaries, and this shows us whether they are ovulatory or anovulatory. And two, we talk about their weight gain, whether this was an abrupt onset of weight gain or whether there was a gradual weight gain, and whether there is any other associated problem along with this for the weight gain, as like that of thyroid dysfunction and so on. And three, after this, we ask them for any family history of polycystic ovaries, whether the mother or her own sibling has got an polycystic ovarian problem. So after diagnosing this, we give them few important investigations to know about the polycystic ovarian severity. This includes their day 2 blood investigations, which they do give in an empty stomach in few centers, and few centers are not particular about it. They do a serum FSH, serum LH, and fasting insulin. And if they are hyperandrogenous, we do ask for a free testosterone report too. After these reports, we come to a conclusion as to the severity of the polycystic ovaries, and we look into what the purpose of them coming to our clinic is. If the girl is approaching us in the premarital age group, we advise her for a weight reduction, wherein by reducing the weight, the 40 to 50% of the severity could be reversed. If it is a married woman who is coming to us seeking to have a child, we work up the male partner, and if the male partner is normal, we start treating her. The first line of management would be weight reduction. We expect them to lose at least 5 to 10% of their present weight, which would put back the hormones to the normal space. So after this, we start them on ovulation induction. So the ovulation induction drugs commonly being used is clomiphene citrate, and if they seem to be resistant to ovulate with this drug, we do add little bit of metformin. Metformin helps them to add on to the ovulation, and if they still remain resistant, we do add little bit of gonadotropins. Mostly the hormone used is a follicle stimulating hormone, either a urinary or a recombinant preparation. So with this, and after assessing the tubal status, we call them for a follicle tracking scan, which we start either on the 8th or the 10th day of their menstrual cycle, and we continue to monitor them every second day to see the dominant follicles coming up. Once the follicle reaches a dominant size of 18 to 20 millimeter, we decide to give them a trigger, followed by either an planned intercourse or an intrauterine insemination based on various factors and the couple presenting symptom. So after this, if they fall pregnant, it is very essential to treat the luteal phase of these patients with progesterone support, as most of them do have luteal phase deficiency. So this could be a simple progesterone vaginal pessary, which they could take it from home for a 15 days period, and seeing the pregnancy test positive, the progesterone support is continued for them for 11 to 12 weeks till the placental autonomy happens. As these patients have a high risk of miscarriage, it's better to educate them before the treatment itself so that they are aware as to use the progesterones. Following this, these patients seems to be normal throughout the pregnancy once they go through the first 12 weeks, and it is very essential to do a glucose tolerance test for these patients prior to pregnancy, and if it seems to be normal, again it has to be repeated at 20 weeks, as most of them seem to be glucose intolerant and few people do have a very high fasting insulin status. They do have a lots of intolerance. So if they seem to have an abnormal glucose tolerance test, they might have to be initiated on a treatment during their pregnancy period with the help of a diabetologist. So following this, they seem to be having not much trouble during the second and the third trimester, and so it becomes our responsibility to give them a safe parturition period and to get a healthy child. So after their parturition, they have to keep continuing their visits with us to make sure that the glucose intolerance has settled and they seem to be normal. And these patients on a long-term process have to have their weight goals standardized so that they remain within the normal range of the weight, and they have to be on a long-term follow-up as they do have long-term sequelae like developing risk of diabetes by the age of late 40s. They do have the risk of developing hypertension and the coronary artery disease due to various thromboembolic phenomena at which they are at high risk. So anyone diagnosed to have polycystic ovaries should be cautious and aware of all the facts that I have spoken about. They must be able to come, identify themselves as to what problem they have, seek the guidance earlier, have their average weight maintained at proper level, and take the guidance of the treating clinician as to their symptom and get the corrected symptoms and the treatment at the earliest to avoid the long-term complications of polycystic ovaries.